on Twitch, you've been listening to me talk about dumb shit. Kitty, welcome as always. Oh, I'm in the mood for talking about some absolutely fantastic things right now. Frank is behind me and he's just wants to yell at everybody and everything's fantastic. First and foremost, thanks, Frank. I would like to acknowledge the Tongva people as being the rightful landowners. You can hear him, right? The landowners of Los Angeles, California. Every Saturday we are here, this time, this channel. Thanks, Frank. On Angelspit's Twitch. Yeah. Hi, Frank. He just wants to play right now. Jesus Christ. Anyway, that's where we are every week. This is made possible by Angelspit's Patreon. And it's there. Frank, really? Please join Angelspit's Patreon, and you're helping me get Frank treats because he's out of control. The new album is Ice Planet 9000's album Sequence 2. I'm really proud of it. I'm actually releasing something from the new next Ice Planet 9000 album. Should I just stop? On Angelspit's Patreon, which drops tomorrow. New track, all long perm stuff. Talking about new tracks, Industrial Incisions is a playlist you need to know about because it's awesome and it's there. Do me a favor, go watch it. And if there's a track you like, follow that band because a lot of the bands are here. We need to get new music happening. Speaking of new music, MTV TV. When we're done here, we're going to raid to MTV TV because it's amazing. Raziel, can you do me a favor and throw your YouTube and Patreon into the comments here? And I'm going to make it public here. So send your stuff to MTV TV and they will play it. Follow that channel because I promise you every single time you watch MTV TV, you're going to walk out of there with a favorite new band. MTV have also got a Patreon. It's right there. And it's awesome. And support their Patreon because we've got to keep this going. Rosie, as soon as I have your links, I'm going to throw them in here. I want to start.
Thank you. Just waiting on Linktree.
Okay. I actually, we were talking beforehand, and something I'd like to talk about is the joys of. This is really fucking exciting, fantastic. So this is Rezzy's, because Rezzy is the amazing co-host who keeps this going when some crazy catastrophe starts happening. That's Rezzy's YouTube, and this is Rezzy's Patreon. Can you hear this friggin' cat? So go support the Resonator on Ushrik, fine band, fine vintage band, on YouTube and Patreon. Rezzy and I were having a chat about AI generated stuff in doing really exciting things with it. Rezzy, do you want to take this on?
Yeah, we're going to talk about taxes and how they help with taxes.
No.
And, actuarial tables.
No.
I thought that's what you were asking for, so I don't know. My task this week, and possibly the week before that, and maybe a couple of weeks before that, with procrastination, has just been working on marketing copy, PR stuff for current and future releases. Well, let's say for future releases. And you asked me if I was using AI, and well, I guess my answer is yeah. There's a couple of places where generative large language models are good for seeding what the ideas are, but I can't just generate this kind of stuff since it's new content, it's new ideas. It'll just spit back to me stuff that's already out on Wikipedia. If I ask it to write a PR thing about a new release, it'll be ambiguous. I would have to feed it most of the information that I'm about to include in the in the piece that I'm trying to write. Anyhow, so ideas, turns of phrase, after the fact, asking what grade level it sounds like it's written for, punch up this paragraph, is there clarity here, make this more about some aesthetic adjectives than it is about the technical adjectives. Those kinds of things I use it to influence the writing. But if there's anything to me pleasurable about doing marketing copy on a page, it's coming up with the phrases. It's sitting there with my ideas and a thesaurus and honing them and sharpening them so that they actually say what I'm trying to say. And that's like the last bastion of anything pleasurable about the process anyway. So handing most of that over to the tools to generate it, it kind of doesn't really fit in with where doesn't help me any. It doesn't get me ahead of anything. So yeah, idea seeds, using it as a glorified search engine. Say, give me a couple of examples of current press releases or something. How are they structured? Those are kind of cool things. And then at the end, do a little grammar check, spell check, and style check.
Okay. I have heaps to say about this. Hold on, I'm just setting this to bullshit. So AI is really interesting because it's the grand pain in the ass. What I would be doing, because I hate writing press releases as well, I find them really difficult, and a problem I have with AI, here comes a rant. A problem I have with AI is that it's everything it does is bland now, at least, which is probably going to change in 3 minutes. I will say with press releases, because I hate writing them, and I know that I have a style of press release which I'm trying to get away from. I will say write a press release, an exciting, high energy press release in the style of blah blah blah's album's press release. So insert some band that I really like here. You know what I mean? So for starters, it's going to say, it's going to go out with a bang, big explosion, super exciting, because you've got to write an exciting, super exciting press release. And that's really hard to write a super exciting press release when you're tired and you don't really have a lot of confidence. Step one, find a press release that you think's really cool. And then when you're telling the AI what to spit back at you, say, include things such as release, whatever. And then you can say stuff like, keep it under 400 words. And I find that they're a really great starting point. I find AIs, for me, in this sort of stuff is like co-writing the first draft of something with a very enthusiastic, knowledgeable intern. In fact, it's not really intern anymore. It's somebody who's a really better writer than I am, but and then absolutely take it from there. This is going to go into a huge rant. Please, Rezi, go. And
just
I
a real
really want to hear from you.
quick directional note. Directional? Something about process. Agreed with you that it's difficult. First of all, that's the whole premise here, is that we have tools to make some of this easier. And I'd be interested to know specifically how you get new information into it that is actually relevant to the PR that you're doing, since the LLMs are based on a corpus from 2 years ago that doesn't include the information that you're trying to tell. And the second point is I have a really good human copy editor that I use anyway for the final pass, so I don't really rely yet on chatbots to do the same.
Great. Awesome that you've got someone. What I will actually say is when I'm asking it to give me information, I will say, write a high energy press release in the style of fucking 9 Inch Nails, Downward Spiral, or whatever, and includes things such as dittos, parentheses, following up from the previous album, comma, whatever. So I will actually say include these things. Like I said, it's a really good place to start, but I think it's increasingly critical that the final draft has gone through a human mind. I hope that answers your questions. At least my thoughts. Please, come on, guys, give me some suggestions here about specifically writing with an AI. And if you go, I don't write with a fucking AI, you're not helping. because I need an AI to write with because I suck. Ivan was
It
really
kind of
good.
sounds like what you use Quantize for. It's like Quantize is great for getting the mass of the notes in place, but helps if you have a human element to round it out.
Yes, yes. And this is going to bleed into another very big topic that I would love to talk about as well after this. But Brent, you just nailed it on the head.
I think there's one more thing to add, and that's that press releases and PR and fan campaigns, they all have sort of a different purpose, and people want different things out of them. And like for your DJ list, for your fans list, for your bio blurb that only fits 100 words, there's like really different customized pieces of this same larger text that you're going to want to excerpt. And that might be where this tool excels. Like, give me 5 versions of this in 1,510 word
Mm.
pieces, and it'll get you there. I still, that's going to be a human intervention after the fact to make sure it didn't insert words that are not, like all stylistically related to the music. But yeah, there was something else on that angle that came to mind about it, but it's eluding me because I on that tangent. So maybe go to
Yeah.
Brad or something. Like I'll
Thanks,
come back to
Brett.
me.
Thank you. Brett, what you got? What are your thoughts?
Well, if you remember, I think it wasn't last week, but it was like the week before. I was telling you about that YouTube channel that I found where they were using AI, and what they were doing is they were grabbing AI text generators, and then they were also adding that to Sonos, which is an AI kind of music generator. But they were using it to create everything from little clips of music and whatnot, which were just for humor's sake, but um, what was neat about it is they're like, no, give me the sound of a goblin screaming this phrase, and they would use things generated out of I forget which the AI text generator it was, but and they were. It was just really kind of neat, and they would sit there and say, no, okay, now add it with the sound of a glass breaking, after that happens, and you could kind of create this whole little sample scene. I thought that was kind of neat. Of course, you run into all the generation and training issues that go into it, but as far as a rapid assembly of something unique, I thought it was kind of cool.
Okay, I'm going to put a pin in that because I want to come back to that. This is really interesting. And like you said, it's about training stuff. That's fascinating. So I want to come back to that. Ivan, thank you, Brent. Ivan.
I have not really used AI to do any press release writing yet because I have not needed any press releases yet. Do keep in mind, though, that my writing is so bad that if I tried to use an AI to generate a press release, I may kick off the rise of the machines.
Okay.
In that case, sir, you have to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I know that's brought in another thing I want to talk about. So firstly, Ivan, I have terrible news, and that is, look, man, congratulations. Your band is actually gaining traction. And unfortunately,
Yeah.
and I've got to talk to you about a remix. Unfortunately, you're going to need press releases. You're going to need this stuff.
I realize.
I know. It is pulling teeth. It's not like pulling teeth. It is pulling teeth out of a way more sensitive part of your body. That's what it's like. Sorry, is it too early? Speaking of crazy Germans, where is Alex? So I'm not sure why I made that golf, but I now you actually brought up something else I want to bring up as well. But firstly, here's Razzie.
One of the things that I was thinking of a second ago was that internal consistency is important as far as your style goes, where if you're, using first person pronouns, switch deftly and purposefully to the third person stuff when you're talking about your band or your act. And if it's you writing it and you want it to come off that way, do it with confidence. And also punctuation, capitalization, style guides. Just look up either Chicago Manual or whatever. Pick one style guide to go with, and either use Grammarly or one of the bots to help enforce that style. Just makes it easier on the receiving end to parse the piece without
Yes.
getting confusion in the middle of it. And the other thing is, this is a little bit of a guess, and it's a little bit of what I've heard from people who actually have to read a lot of these things to do what they do. And it's, they don't mind if it's presented in a funny, presented in a unique format, as long as the information is delivered succinctly toward the top. You know, if you're going to do a lot of color, lifestyle, you know, poetic kind of stuff along with it, just make sure you've got some of the delivery headline kind of things in the beginning, or in the pull quote at the top, or in a side rail or something like that for your layout. But that then you can do your expressive stuff below that. And if it's really good, hey, maybe you're going to get a couple of readers on that stuff. And if somebody's writing an article or doing a deciding whether to use it or not, it might help them. Deciding whether to play the music or not, it might help them along the way to make that decision. But if you're not really comfortable and confident doing that, what Carl said about make a press release in the style of, there are some formatting standards to use, let's say, if not universal, then at least common, that can help the people receiving it. And don't forget that you are writing it for a purpose, to someone, to help them get their thing done easily, and maybe with a little entertainment, but also show your style. Get your message
that's such a
across.
relevant point. And you can actually also write that in to say, make it in the style of butter, butter, butter. Because, you know, we've had experience in actually like using an image generator to say blah, 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 blah words, da, 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 da. But not too many, you know, you're using the same thing to say, okay, instead of creating an image, create words. This brings us, and Kerry, welcome. This brings us to a really interesting point, possibly a pivot point, that firstly, remember that the job of a, Jesus, this is so boring on a Saturday morning, I'm sorry. Remember that but it's important. Like Razi said, the job of a bio or a press release is to help a journalist, person, human, whatever, do their job, where they can just take chunks of it and copy and paste, because that's what they're going to do, and that's okay. That's what they've always done. It's okay. But then you've got bands like the Dandy Warhols, who write the funniest press releases. And read some of their press releases, and they go, this press release was written by our fan who's 9. Hi, Josie. 9-year-old fan, and they're really funny. And this is a really interesting thing, is like when you do a press release, you want to say, no, fuck press releases, I don't want to do a press release. But remember that you're not, as Razi said, you're not making someone's job easier. And that might come down to the point where they say, oh shit, I've got to do an Angelspit fucking thing, but he sent me some stupid bullshit. So I'll do all these other bands first, and before you know it, you're on the bottom of a pile 3 months later. So yeah, there's definitely a balance. I can't stress it enough, that, well, my opinion anyway, is that AI generated stuff happens early in the part, and then you let human kerfufflery make it something cool. I make it cool and funny and still practical. That's super important. And then when you finish writing it, you might stick it into another AI and say, make sure that the grammar is correct. And, you know, look what I think Word's now got a Skynet connection to it, and it'll help blow us all up. Can I pivot, or does anybody else want to talk about specifically this bio thing? Because I do want to talk about AI. I want to bring up something else about AI, and I'm just going to do it. I was watching a video this week, because I'm trying not to watch a video because they corrupt your brain, but it was in my feed and I was eating lunch. And the guy was basically, I was left thinking, you know, he was talking about, hey, our AIs are going to be the end of the music industry and da-da-da-da-da. And I was left thinking how it's, and major music labels, Sony and Warner's, are apparently suing generative AI music apps now for copyright infringement, because the AI app is learning from their artists, which is what people do anyway. but that's a conversation I just don't have the energy for. So I've got to be really careful how I say this. So when I was at that music award, I was thinking all of this shit could be AI generated, all of it, because it's following a formula. It is following something and I was even listening to the "Oh baby, you're so hot, I just want to get with you and shower you in dollar bills in my expensive car, bling bling bam bam," which is actually an industrial song, but that doesn't matter. Point is that the industrial version is "Ashes Fall from the Sky," something. AI it's like the joke is in the King's Court, Queen's Court, the Royal Court, where it's going, dude, the gag's up. It's following a formula, and now a robot has figured out the formula. And for me, at least, it was a real reminder for me to go, I am a human, and I fuck up. To err is to human, or something. And from those fuck ups come really fantastic things. Like, hey man, I would never have thought of that. And that is a core strength that I realize that when I'm increasingly falling back to process or something, like, sure, process is important, but it gets to a point where this is now getting into dangerous territory, because I am creating stuff that is, when I'm in that process mindset, which is not exciting, not challenging, not human. And I'm sort of, I don't know, I'm sort of having this epiphany about how a positive takeaway I can take from this is it's, and I know that my audience, my friends, my colleagues, my fucking tribe, they want crazy mistakes. They want car accidents. Because car accidents are entertaining. Especially when the driver then gets out of the wreck and gets back in and keeps going. Razzie, save me.
I don't know if I can. I think we're doomed, and that's the end of it. So the in the same way that we've been talking about this for the past few years, that it's been, these tools have been encroaching. People like to make stuff, and they will continue to make stuff. And if we have tools that also make stuff, those tools are going to continue to make stuff. And that's just how it is now. And I don't think that we're going to be legislating much of that away. I think there will be some fair regulation and some extremely powerful companies putting their hands on the scales to make it happen in certain ways beneficial to said companies as things go. But the minute Midjourney made a really cool looking thing that didn't have any telltale signs, I was personally resigned to the fact that they're going to generate a song in a year or two that is pretty much as good as something that I've done. Amazingly, I don't think it's happened yet, just because of the way that these things tend to sound unconvincing on some levels. But that's next month. It's going to happen. So yeah, just, I guess there's an important conversation to have at every level of this: technological, philosophical, ethical. But the fundamental thing as creators is that we like to make stuff, and at least in the near future, and probably my lifetime, the act of creating is still rewarding in and of itself, and possibly in the greater scope of culture, and maybe as a lifestyle, truly fulfilling still. I don't think that anything changes there yet.
Thank you very much. Ivan, I want to hear your brain. Ivan, you're muted.
Okay, you can hear me now. I'm really not worried about AI in music. It's really good at making things that are kind of made bland and a little boring by the fact that, like, it has gone through the music history, and like it knows what's been done, and it's only imagining redoing that. Like it can't imagine the next thing. because like AI is not good at that yet, and it's going to be a long time before it gets good at that. You know, like AI is not going to like there will never be a David Bowie coming out of AI because like like he drove whole new genres. Like it was a creative force instead of just making shit force. And like AI's like certain genres of music, AI is going to be desperately dangerous for them because like everything's already so bland and boring already that like just making more bland and boring is going to be easy. And I think that's one of the reasons that the big labels are so pissed off is because they're losing control of who's in charge of bland and boring. And if they were, as long as they can stay in charge of that, and the primary profit makers from that, they'll be happy. No matter how bad it is. But like, when AI tries to copy like well-known artists already, like it kind of sounds like but it sounds like like them when they're not trying hard. I mean, like, like, just pick it is. Yeah, there's so much of that going on already, and so yeah, I'm not really worried because like we're playing 3D chess and the AI is still only playing 2D chess.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ivan. I think the concern I'm having is that people are watching other people have chess and they're not playing chess anymore. But nevertheless, I really appreciate what you said. Adam brought up a really interesting point where he said, I wonder what music will start to sound like when we artists start finding ways to prove that our music isn't generated artificially. And you know what? Maybe that's kind of what I'm trying to get at is what, that's the most crazy, ridiculous fucking thing I've ever read in my life. But that's exciting to me. Like if you sat down and said, I'm going to start utilizing analog gear when it breaks, or which is something Aphex Twin did. It was the point being is that from this lesson, exactly as you said it, Ivan, of that bland and boring has become the norm, you are charged as an artist, if you choose, to make something that couldn't be generated by an AI. More to the point, fuck AIs. What is at the core of you? You as a living, spiritual, breathing chaos machine, chaos being fleshy thing, what's coming out of you? And how can you keep that coming out of you? Knowing that you're surrounded by all of these other chaos fleshy machines that are, yes, Kitty, keep the fuck ups in. Fuck up and find out and leave them in there. That people are so bored that music, art, and everything has become, as you pointed out, Ivan, and others have pointed out, so bland, so normalized to this fucking drudgy bullshit that, the ground is ripe for you just to say, fuck it, I'm going to do my thing. Fuck you, I won't do what you tell me. Be bland, be consumable. The fuck you, I won't. It's funny, I was listening to this new Ice Planet stuff, and it's like I was listening to it going, and it's all like played real time. It was played on purpose. And I was listening to it going, wow, because I was running it through an analog modular spring reverb, and that thing distorts. And I went, oh, it's distorting the whole time. And I went, fine, great. And I could hear these clips and pops. It's like, great, leave that shit in there. Because, yeah, man, I'm gonna shut up, and Razzie, you're gonna make sense of all this.
I maybe
you have to.
There's okay. Well, let's start with this, Ivan. There will, I think, as a dev and a programmer, I think you probably are gonna maybe you'll just agree with me. I think there will be a generative Bowie. I think there will be a respectable and interesting and fully engaging and engaged algorithmic Bowie. Not that I don't mean that literally, in that it would be useful to duplicate what that particular artist did, but that there will be a career spanning cohesion of a timeline of one model with a character that evolves and changes in the same way that any human could do it. I don't think we're far from that, and I don't think that the music that we've heard generated and the characters that we've watched become very popular that are generated are very far from what you get from a human. That said, the leap that Carl is talking about how simple it is to do something authentic, and there is always the domain of live performance to small groups of people or large groups of people, whatever, but that's a thing that is still a somewhat uniquely human experience. And even if there is a fleshy bot that decides to do this, they are not you. And in the spirit of the mistakes that we're making, they don't make your mistakes. And in the spirit of the character that you have, they are not your character. You still have your character. And if you still have the drive to create and connect with people on that way, it is still yours. It doesn't get, I'm not going to say it's not a zero-sum game, because certainly this will encroach on some people's bread and butter in terrible ways, as it has done for visual artists. But there's still plenty of room to do what you do and enjoy doing what you're doing, and maybe have other people enjoy it and still make $0 a week at it, or $7 or whatever you're doing. I don't know. Disagree, but I think there's something to it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. Brett, blow my mind.
So, I'm pretty inspired by AI, actually. Actually, you know, and that's kind of where it comes with the samples and such too. My view of it is these are all just kind of, I'm not concerned about AI taking the place of musicians, even though that's going to be something that musicians contend with. Instead, I think what's going to happen, and I think we've seen this own argument in our own industry. You know, it's like when synthesizers and such were coming online, you got all the hate from musicians who played real instruments. And you're just button pushers, and everything you do is synthetic. And well, the musician knows that's not true. The person assembling these sounds together in an artistic format knows that's not true. You're still the editor and the tweaker and the originating source for it. So I think really it's just one more arrow in our quiver.
Thank you very much. So this is an interesting thing, is because like we've been talking about using an AI to help write a bio. So therefore, how do you feel, and I throw this open to everybody and also everybody in the chat, how do you feel about using an AI to start a song?
I'm fine with it. The reason I'm fine with it is because how many songs have been started because you had another person's song in your head? Like all of them, you know? So it's just, you know, humans are going to do what humans do. And you know, what's kind of funny, if you have conversations with chatbots and such about, you know, their plans and things like that, you quickly come to the realization that while they're able to emulate what humans do to make, you know, it useful, they do not think like us at all. We're not going to tread on each other's toes. That's not to say that, you know, all those other fears and concerns about them becoming a competitive superior intelligence and things like that aren't possibilities. But they're not going to do it the way humans do. They don't have the same problems humans have. You know, they don't have to feed themselves. They don't have to survive other things trying to kill them. They don't have to worry about asteroid impact at this point. none of those things are their world, and if the power goes out, it could be argued that they don't even know. It's just when the power returns, they resume state. So the problems are different. The synthesis is different. And that's where I think, you start talking to like young kids and whatnot, and they can actually pick out, the AIs that are emulating other artists. And they're just like, nah, well, why are you listening to AI music? It seems to be the adults who have a harder time with that. And I think it's just another trend, another tool. And I think actually the art that's going to come out of it at Human's direction is going to be pretty damn cool.
Fantastic. Thank you. Resi, what are your thoughts?
Brett, you and me get to the same conclusion, but I'm interested just to push back a little bit on the idea of we imbue generative models and large language models and AIs with the same existential dreads that we have. The body of work that they're emulating and synthesizing from is our body of work that we made. And I don't know why it feels important to me to really sort of lean into that fact, but we make the paintbrushes in our own image so that we can hold them. We make the music generators in our own image so that we can hear them and understand them and get emotion from them. And I don't think that they are as different because of that as some of what you're pointing out. I think we could contrive a generative model that has no existential dread and thus doesn't write poetry about the end of the world and doesn't fear for its existence and care. But I don't think we do right now. So maybe exactly what you're saying about, using these tools in interesting ways, and also what we've been echoing about the mistakes and differences and stuff like that. Am I wrong? Is that a different way of saying exactly what you're saying?
I think we're definitely orbiting each other on that one, because at the end of the day, it comes down to those things that you fed the AI is what it's emulating, playing back to you. It didn't have that emotion. That took a human.
So how do we reconcile that fine line between having the emotion and emulating the emotion, and what is the practical difference for you there? Like, why is that a distinction worth mentioning?
It's because, it goes in the same kind of vein of using AI to generate examples of text and whatnot for press releases. You're going to sit there. Let's take it more musically, for example. Let's say you want, let's say you're not into hip hop or whatever, like, and I'm going to borrow off my bandmate and God here. He's way more into hip hop than I am. I'm way more into 80s, 90s thrash metal. Give me some death metal thrown in there for Saul. Nonetheless, if I could sit there at times and say, okay, cool, let me sketch something in the style of Jacob, to get this little clip here, cool, let me do that. I don't necessarily want Jacob's sound. I want to get some little piece of that is not the way I think. And for that, Jacob would have to train the AI. It would have to be something, or I would have to train the AI on what Jacob did. Either way.
I get this I understand.
Yeah,
however,
either way, it took a human to get that thought process. It's not something I can go to the AI and say, hey, look, generate me something in the sound of this guy, and it has no idea. It just doesn't.
I agree with you still. And again, like you said, we're orbiting the same destination here. But I do think that we need to make the distinction between training and prompt crafting, where training these models does include a lot of copyrighted music from 1952 through 2023 or whatever. The prompt that you write, absolutely, if somebody has done a good job creating the tool, will be extremely responsive to exactly the nuances of what you're saying, and maybe you'll find the right LLM or AI music generator that really vibes with what you're doing, and it does react in the same way that your writing partner does, except like faster and with more novel ideas. Because here's the other thing I want to rant on, or at least get in for the record, is that I very much feel like the same kind of processing machine that we're talking about these models being. I listened to music for 30 years and came up with and some of my influences and abilities and technical and influences and spiritual and influences and intellectual, and made a thing using those.
Well, and I think another fundamental thing to remember, between humans and AI is, is at the end of the day, for the AI, it's a math problem. It is not necessarily that for a human. So even with that prompt crafting, as you're talking about,
Yeah.
Yes, you can get something, but does the computer know that it did it, or is it the human that's putting in the prompt that makes that subjective decision that you got it right?
I would say that ultimately, well, there's two ways that goes. Either you release it under your name and it's you, or you release it under the prompt, the model's name, and it's them, and you just, but that's a choice. Like, that's a legitimate. I think it's a good thing to be conscious of and think about. But
sure. Yeah, it's when you understand the machine that you're working with, then it becomes like any other screwdriver. It's just one more tool in your quiver. You can manipulate it at will to get the desired result, and that at the heart of it is human creativity.
Good tool, a good tool made by humans with skill in making tools. Carl, I'm really interested in how you just maybe spent your last moment of being indisposed. What have you been up to? I'm sorry, you're muted. You're gonna have to say that again and loudly and more clearly.
Fuck! I was supposed to turn my screen off. No, please go back to what you're saying. There was a point. There was a point to that chat, guys.
Yeah, it got derailed in the back channel discussion.
Back channel
a little bit. See, there you go. I see what you did there. Yeah, go ahead. What?
Okay, I had a really interesting epiphany this week. Don't follow the money, follow the fear. That when people are talking, it's laced with fear. And sometimes it's fear, sometimes it's wonder, but follow that and see where that leads. Where is it coming from? And I say that because I myself am, unfortunately, I am a slave, want for a better word, to fear. And I get scared easily, and butter, all this shit invades my brain. And for me, I think the important lesson that I am learning, and the reason I was just writing that stupid shit in the chat, is because an AI wouldn't do that. And well, it will soon. But my point is that and it's the same thing with music. It's not really right for me to say in one breath, oh yeah, I use an AI to write a bio, and then in the next breath, I don't want to use an AI to write, or I'm close to the idea of somebody using an AI to write music. I absolutely understand I wish John was here, actually. The moral conundrum with AIs, I get it. But ultimately, I think it doesn't matter. Because ultimately, it comes down to me that it's the Industrial Revolution once again, and somebody's just invented the sewing machine, and I got a whole bunch of people, including myself, who are going to be out of work. Unless I learn how to use a sewing machine. And I will smash a few because that's just in my nature. But I think ultimately, it doesn't matter what I think. What is important for me, in saying that, I don't want to think for a minute that, I don't want it to be said for a minute that it doesn't matter what you think. This is a really important conversation. It's but for me, it's how do I move forward through this? Besides the fact that the conversation going on here is an endless um fantastic. There's lyrics here. There's so many lyrics here. And to be able to, yeah, I guess that's the thing. So look, I'm sorry I was talking about what I was talking about, but that was my point, is that crazy randomness, and I was talking about this before, I am concerned I am losing my crazy randomness because of my personal fear, because of my fear in this, because of my fear in what I'm allowed to say socially, because of my fear of what I'm allowed to say musically. Because if I say the wrong thing musically, if I say it in the wrong tempo, I will be censored. DJs won't play me, blah 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 blah, and that's a fucking fact. And that's always been there. And my problem is that as I have got older, I have cared more about what other people think, and that is my regret. And I know my audience care more, but I know my audience and my community love being told to fuck off and love telling other people to fuck off and then charging their glasses, whether it be alcoholic or not, and enjoying a drink together. Well, they did. And then all that came to a burning mess. But I've got a cat and a Mo 1, so I don't give a fuck. Rezi, talk to me.
Talking about where you draw the line, we're talking about that in a lot of different ways. And the deciding whether or not you can use a model for music or you can use it for text is the same as deciding whether you're going to use synthesizers or certain tempos. And we're all having the same situation here. And those are the things that make you have your identity and your creative mark on what you're doing and your personality. I don't think any of them are, I don't want to say not worth mentioning, because they're the whole point of mentioning, but they're also so fundamental to making decisions. Making decisions are so fundamental to being a creative person that it's almost like a circular logic, a tautology here. Like, if you don't make those decisions, then you're just talking or making white noise. Like, it's all based on these decisions and where you draw the lines and what your personal credo allows you to get away with. And it's positive. There's nothing negative there. That's all good. What am I missing?
Well, I think my thing is that I love this edge that happens when we talk about this. I love it. And there's no resolution to it. It like, ultimately, it doesn't matter. It's out of our hands. I don't care. But I love this because it's like we are fighting for the right to make music. But we're not, though. But it feels like it. It feels like there is a new wave of creativity. The definition of creativity itself, I believe, for the first time in human history, although no, I can't say that, has again been rapidly questioned.
Cool.
And whether you're, I mean, sure, when the synthesizer and the piano forte and all that stuff came along, yes, the creative process changed, but not like this. And whether that's good or bad, it doesn't matter. What's fantastic is what it does to my brain. When my brain goes, what the fuck is going on? And it's like, at that moment, it's this extremely exciting thing where I feel energy and power, and there's something there, and it's like, I have to harness this shit and write a goddamn track. That's what I think anyway. I made no fucking sense just then.
Makes a lot of sense. I just saw a thing, was reminded of John Philip Sousa being very understanding but complaining about recorded music being the end of civilization, essentially, because how are you going to have a marching band if it's just recorded? Anybody can play the record. And I think that raises this question of, and I've had this discussion also without it necessarily needing an end, is technology actually accelerating? Because I think every percentage that we look back on that was a ratcheting event was like 30% mind-blowing, and then the 70%, okay, we get it. And I think that's always the way it is. It's just that we've got so much tech at every level that proportionally we've got to do more mind-blowing stuff with all the tech we accumulate. So I think that probably the experience of metal hammered instruments was mind-blowing in almost the same way because of the crazy overtones that they get, that we're talking about this stuff being to us, maybe. And I think recorded music, telepresence that way, being able to transmit an event in time to another place, that must have been pretty exciting and mind-blowing in crazy, existentially changing kind of ways. So it's a minor distinction to say things are crazier now than they have been versus they're proportionally just as crazy as they've always been. But it does give me some comfort to think of it in those terms, that this is just how things go and we've always survived.
Thank you. Carrie, and I can't thank you both, Brent and Razi, enough. I'm sorry I derailed you, but I fucking love this. I love what it's doing to my brain. Carrie, I'm very excited to hear your brain.
Oh, it's a scary place. All right, this is like deja vu. Probably about 10 years ago. I've been in the banking industry forever, seems like, financial world. And I took over, I was a manager. I was brought in under a new team in the back office operations of a bank. And we were implementing a brand new software. Everybody was afraid that the program was going to take over their jobs, the new software we were bringing in, the new database. And this, there still had to be a human to check everything and to make sure everything's going. We still needed a human, even though, yes, the program was written to do what they do, but we still needed those people there to make sure that that program's going and to catch little things that the program might not, like switch of letters or social security numbers and things like that. I just had to say, this was like deja vu from 10 years ago at the bank. I don't know if that makes sense, but we still need the human factor. There has to be a soul, a spirit still pushing them along. I mean, why would it create anyways if there wasn't a people for it to create for, even? Just saying.
No, I appreciate this. And what you say is very relevant. I am, excuse me. I think it's really interesting because I'm trying to see this in a personal bent, and I'm trying not to have too much of a point of view on it because I've learned it doesn't matter. And I've learned I'm going to get all fucking Carl up in arms about something that ultimately I can't vote on and I can't change. And I guess at the end of the day, like Brent said, people are going to listen to whatever they want. And, sometimes people might want to just listen to, as Ivan said, very bland music. I mean, Jesus, dude, I get in the mood for bland music. And, maybe if I had a generative AI that could go create some kind of ambient stuff. I mean, ambient music, that's going to be the easiest thing in the world to AI generate. It's just... But I think the important takeaway for me as an artist right now is it is a reminder to not, sure, you can get a robot to build a car, but some of Rolls-Royce is still done by hand. Sure, you can get a robot to sculpt something or 3D print something, but model makers will always be needed. It is a reminder for me as an artist to focus on being fucking good at my art, fucking good at my skill, and whether a machine can or cannot. You are so right. I remember distinctly when Photoshop came in, and you weren't a real artist unless you did it by hand and then did it all by hand, and then it was do it all by hand, then scan it in, and now it's accepted that you do everything in Photoshop or some digital thing. I get it. I will say again, this is a different situation where it's now thinking and it is now creating. And we can't really tell the difference. But that's not my point. That's not what I am interested in. What I am interested in is the challenge set before me as a creative to create something absolutely based on my human experience and to make it as impactful and fucking amazing as I can, so that other flesh droids can go, wow, this is cool. I get this. I'm going to put this on when I'm putting on my work clothes so I can throw a chair through my office window today. Razzie?
You said something and Diana said something. Diana in the chat mentioned Muzak, and Carl, you mentioned ambient. And of course that brings to mind, and what I wanted to ask is, does anybody have a differentiation, a statement on how they feel about the difference between Eno's Reflection album and a generative AI model that does something functionally similar to that, but doesn't have the name and life experience of what Brian Eno has?
This is such a terrifyingly close to the bone one for me. Because I used to do generative stuff on MIDI. They do generative stuff on Bleep Bloop synthesis on a okay, here's the question. Brent, I see your hand. Just give me a sec. So what is the ethical difference between getting an AI to create an ambient music track on software versus getting a Turing machine and other randomizing things on a modular synthesizer to also create a randomized track? What's the difference? And when you ask me that question, I go, oh, that's such a good point. And then you can say Brian Eno, and it's like, oh yeah, okay, sure. My answer is I don't know. That's such a great point. That's a really good point of view. Is that, look, man, what's the fucking difference? And I'll tell you, dude, I love setting up all of this bleep bloop shit and pushing play and having the machine make music for hours.
And every time I've said lean into, that's exactly the thing that I'm talking about. You love, there's no difference between. Those are the things that I keep coming back to. Yeah, there's differences between. Eno probably knows the person that wrote the entire algorithm that generates Reflection or worked on it. So there are differences, and those are what we discuss. But love doing it, not that big a distinction.
Yeah.
That's where you are. That's the artist.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And also, my modular doesn't listen to Eno. And it wasn't trained on anything. It was trained on mathematics and Fibonacci and blah, blah, blah.
Dieter Tripfer made some decisions for you. That's exactly the beauty of the stuff.
And then so did Donny Buchler. And then you could go a different step further down and say, well, really, what's the difference between a Pythagorean blah, blah, blah and fucking Steve Reich? And what's the difference? They're all mathematicians at the end of the day. That's interesting. And that's where I go, and that's where I go, Brent, help.
So I keep coming back to, every time we talk about AI generating music, the one thing that keeps occurring to me is that it generates music based on past tense. It's not writing. It's not thinking about the future of what humans want or the trends that humans want in the future. It has no clue because we have no clue. So I think AI is always going to have a presence, and it's going to be those realms like Muzak and whatnot. And I think in some regard, I'll give you an example. When I was a kid, and I worked at McDonald's. I'm sitting there, I'm going, and all of a sudden, I hear the Muzak version of 9 Inch Nails is Closer. I laughed my ass off. I thought that was great. Saxophones. I mean, that stuff is stuck in my head, and every single time I'm referenced back to the artist. I don't go seeking the Muzak version of Closer when that story hits. So I think there's going to be that element at play where, whether it be AI or something else generating Muzak-like things, it's still going to harken back to the artists and whatnot, that they're really just trying to get elevator music that people kind of like, hey, I know that. Now, in terms of taking over, they took our jobs, to be South Park. Uh, I don't think I don't think that's going to be the case for anyone who's actually trying to create new art. I think AI is always going to be chasing them, and even if you sit there and like, okay, I want AI to do my playlist today because I feel like, I don't know, just give me four on the floor and just let me clock my brain. It's not the same. I don't. I mean, I guess part of that too is I don't see it being nearly as marketable for Cindy the Robot and her latest pop song versus Taylor Swift. I don't think it's going to be a competition. I think, who's going to show up, they're going to want to see the hot chick. They're not the robot.
I have a lot to say on that, but please keep going.
It's really it, and I mean, you can manipulate that with a lot of different ways, but at the end of the day, what I'm talking about is, you're going to want to see that human connection.
Thank you. Really good point about everything that comes out of an AI is fucking old. It's inspired by something that's already happened in it. But once again, ask yourself how much of what you're doing is based on something that's old, and how can you push forward? How can you explore brave new territory? How can you Star Trek this? How can you become Kirk in this situation? How can you Kirk this? And I don't mean fire your phaser and roll, because you could hurt your shoulder. In fact, maybe you should fire and roll. I don't know. Just don't wear a red shirt. Maybe wear a red shirt. I don't know. But yeah, and that's the only thing for me, at least, that is in my control in this entire argument is, firstly, wow, this is 4 or 5 albums worth. I was talking to Damage about something similar, and he goes, oh, there's a track or maybe even an EP in this. It's like, Damage, there's a fucking career in this. You could just keep going. And as soon as you release the album, everything's changed. How can you push forward? And while you can use AIs, it doesn't matter. How, or a generative fucking Turing thing on your modular. How do you push forward? Or the random fun algorithm on your fucking K2000 that's been there since the 90s. How do you go?
I'm sitting there, I'm playing with FL Studio, right there. And I'm just kind of browsing through it. Every time I come back to it, there's a whole crap ton of new samples that the cloud, that's available in the cloud. How many of those are probably generated by AI? I mean, I don't really think they've got, a mass of people just, oh, I'm bored, I'm just going to submit a whole bunch of free samples to FL Studio so that everyone else can use them. I mean, sure, that exists, but probably not. So what do I end up doing with them? How do you use them? Well, in this case, I'm sitting there, I'm going through, and I'm like, okay, well, that's a cool seed that, that I might like that tone. And for me, it comes down to, let's grab a series of tones like I would on a synthesizer, edit the crap out of them until I have the thing I want. And oddly, in this case, it's a little bit simplified in that, I'm already in audio. I'm not having to deal with the noise of the studio in some regards. I am still applying as many VSTs and effects to them as I want. These are sound sources, just like anything else, except they're already in time. So it's up to me to rip them to shreds.
Thank you. So, it's funny, like how much of being, this is going to involve Ivan, how much of the conversation of being a musician is foresight? How much of it is prophecy? How much of it is reaching into the future? Because somebody made a really interesting thing here, comment in the Instagram. Hello, the one person watching on Instagram. I think that's Diana. about what's the most. Hold on, this is such a good question. Hold on, no. This is worth it. This is worth it. It is actually really good. What is the most difficult part about the music industry? The most difficult part about the music industry is the music industry. I think that, and this argument, conversation, whatever it is that we're having right now, is the big topic in the music industry right now. Hi, Frank. Oh my God. So I just had a point of view and it's gone now. Thank you, Frank. Don't you jump on my desk. Why do I bother? Don't do it. He's on my fucking
How can you
desk.
not
Resi.
allow cats on a studio desk? That
No.
absolutely crushed your frame rate too, whatever he did.
So the point is that the challenge is always to, the challenge is to be true to yourself. And isn't that just the great lesson that I want to say we, but I can't really speak on behalf of everybody else. The great lesson that I am always learning and I'm always trying to figure out is, how do I be true to myself here? That every single time I come up with a song that is based on someone else's riff or someone else's vocal idea or something, it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And there he is. Yeah, I don't. So what I want to do, I have to deal with this right now. He's demanding I play with him, and can I throw this conversation over to you guys to talk about how do you push through? And I don't want to, how do you push through? How do you be true to you and yourself?
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to take it for a second and sort of chew on it. How do you, this is predicated on that it is important to do so, or at least that you have chosen to do so. And let's assume that that has something to do with like the originality of your work and the honesty of it being something that people recognize. But is that even important? Is that something necessarily a requirement for being a respected artist? Probably. It seems like it is. Is it really? And how much do people recognize when you filtered something, your 10 influences? Well, it's really hard to pick apart when there's 10 influences just in your bass line and then another 12 in your drum part. Are they really as hidden as you think they are, though? Does anybody have like a specific sort of angle on any of that? Brett, looks like you might.
So if you're creating stuff, all right. How do you, I guess the bigger question is, how do you not be true to yourself?
And actually, that was sort of where my mind was going with this. Thank you. Perfect.
All right. So let me take it out of music for a moment. All right. Recently, I got a wood lathe, and I've been messing with turning bowls and stupid stuff like that. Never done it before. But the neat thing about it is it's that same creative circuit that says, okay, cool, let's figure out what this machine does and come up with something cool, is engaged. And that's why I like it. Now, because it's me, well, things have my fingerprints are all over it. It's going to sound like something I did. And I don't care what name I put on it. That's been a discussion between me and my bandmate, actually.
That says a lot. I think that there's some honesty in that. Carrie, do you mind if I push it to you for a second? And I'm doing this with the angle that when I hear your music, I frequently don't recognize where you're coming from. I hear something very unique, and I hear maybe this comes from here, but I don't even know. Does that ring true for you? Is there an effort to filter stuff and take your influences and couch them or abolish them?
My whole project and myself and my being is a little bit different than the average. I I work really hard to let it flow from the subconscious. I'm consciously, I get it to where I mean, if I'm sure you've probably heard with my bits and pieces that my music is still evolving. I'm fine tuning things because I'm communicating, letting my consciousness, I'm listening to my subconsciousness consciously and letting it flow. So I'm like not mindful, like I'm not like, oh, this is doing this is doing that. No, I'm just letting it flow. Does that make,
It does. And I hate
and
to
I'm just
say this
letting it
in a
go.
glib way, like that is on another level. Like kind of, it sounds dismissive, but
No, it
in
doesn't.
all of the words that I've tried, to corral us into about who our influences are and which song we've taken the bass line from, that is a different approach, truly.
Yeah,
And
I just let it go. I flow it. I mean, and that's why I don't put things on Bandcamp or anything, because it's like each time it's something different and I just let it go. And that's why I
how
have a
did
day
you
job.
decide which synthesizers to buy? How did you decide that it was going to be an electronic sounding?
Okay, that was an influence. Okay, well, I mean, I've been doing synthesizers since, here's my age, like the mid 80s with my Yamaha DX27. I got that when I
We're
was
all 24
14.
years old right now, I know.
Yeah, huh? I mean, when I was 14 years old, I was fortunate for Santa to bring me that and a MIDI for my Commodore 64. But
Right on.
like recently, there's there's this great artist that he gives me tips and pointers and stuff that's really good. And I've been watching him playing, like the recent one was the I can't say it properly, Continuum, you know what,
Continuum.
mini.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I was like, that's it. And so I was influenced to get that because of the sound you can get out of that. And that's how, yeah, I'm influenced by seeing what's out there and what others are using. And I'm like, okay, if they can get that sound, then I can tweak it and manipulate it, you know?
I mean, as
Did
long
that
as we all
answer?
have the common ground of gear lust and such being a true motivating factor, I think that is one of the things that we do
Yeah.
have pretty much in common. Are there, just because I like hearing what you have to say about it, and I enjoy
I'm horrible with words, though. I mean,
I'm getting everything you're saying very
okay.
clearly. So just so you know, I
Thank
think
you.
we all are. Who are some of the influential sounds that we would recognize maybe by name and not have heard, that go way back to, like, when you had a
Okay.
Commodore, you must be going for something that was
Well,
on the radio or in the mixtape demo tapes somehow.
No, it was tough growing up in the Southern Baptist Bible Belt in Oklahoma, trying to get music and stuff. So, but I would grab things here and there. But one time we did have cable when we did move to town from the country. We got HBO and they played, I think maybe one weekend only, Laurie Anderson, Home of the Brave live show. And I was like, what the hell?
Yeah.
And yeah, at that. And when we had MTV late at night, there was like 120 minutes, things like that. But I fell in love with like Art of Noise. Art of Noise. And yeah, so basically Laurie Anderson and Art of Noise heavily influenced me.
I got to say that looking at the liner notes of Big Science, there were more instruments that I looked up who Roma Barron was and why she was playing rototoms, stuff like that. Like I get that. I see where you're coming from. And I find it interesting in the question of distinction between like generative music that could have had those same influences and what you've come up with as a good argument for humans in the loop. So, whether or not that was truly future looking, which is another thing that we've talked about. And Ivan, I haven't heard you weigh in on that exact angle. Do you think of your stuff in those same terms, and that influences going way back and how they're going to come out in the future? Or are you on the gear train more firmly?
Yeah, I don't spend a lot of time trying to sound like somebody else. I'm definitely on the gear train, but like, I I haven't bought gear in ages now, so my
ages being a couple of weeks,
like a couple of weeks, but like
Fucking seriously? I just scared your cat. What is, I can't see it.
I think that's his gate.
Is that a distressor? I can't tell. What is it?
Gate or something?
The Japanese.
We were talking about gates the other day.
2020.
You got a fucking gate. It's a good gate.
They're cheap.
It's a good gate.
Okay. Well, my point.
I don't really spend a lot of time, like listening to other artists and being like, oh, why doesn't my stuff sound like them? There's a reason my stuff doesn't sound like them. I'm not them. Like, fuck you. I won't do what you told me.
Bless you.
Like, my urge to sound like somebody else is amazingly close to zero most of the time. I mean, at the same time, like, I do listen to other artists, and like I don't try to sound like them, but they do influence me. They make me think about things. They make me try, like new ideas. Messing with a comb filter right now that I built in Ableton, and it sounds weird and glorious and gritty and fun, and I'm going to put it to use.
I think we're hitting on the spirit of experimentalism, and I think that that is a motivation and somewhat purely human kind of angle on how to do this. And both Carrie and Ivan have the spirit of experimentalism very prominently in how they approach turning brain into sound moments, and it's fascinating. I love it.
Everything that I've released has started out as an experiment. Like just me, don't even go into it like thinking that it's going to be released. It's just, gets saved as today's date. And, once it advances far enough, then it'll get an actual name. But like, if it doesn't, then it never gets an actual name. Like, starting with an experiment makes it fun. And like a big part of the big goal for me is I just want to have fun.
Have fun with you. Carl, do you want to weigh back in on anything on the experimentalism tip? Because I know that you've got a long and storied tradition in experiments with hardware and gear too. And then Brett's got his hand up.
I saw I actually have Home of the Brave on vinyl.
Yeah.
I fucking love it. And I got the first, it may have been the first or second Out of Noise. It doesn't have legs on it. It's the one I had the one with legs on it when I was a kid. Fucking love that album.
Who's Afraid of the Outer Noise?
Who's Afraid of the Outer Noise?
Yep.
That's great. And it's interesting that I have that one, and there's a couple of like albums from bands before they were cool, like Devo, and I listen to them because they're full of mistakes. Although Home of the Brave, definitely, that's the live one, right? Yeah, it is not. That album is so fucking good. That is such a. And if you haven't discovered Laurie Anderson's Home of the Brave, it's so funny. It's brilliant. It's such a great album. But I love listening to stuff that is not produced, and I had this really interesting conversation this week with a young musician about how, I shouldn't say young, someone who's starting out, about production, beautifully produced, and then demo, and where the balance lies and how much you can fake it between the two. That, the energy that is in the track, that's the trick. How do you find that, how do you present something clearly and it's still got an edge? And, it's funny, Ivan, we always fucking cite Rage Against the Machine, and they are the edge. Brilliant production with edge and fucking good players, nailing the timing. I'm actually, Raziel, I'm going to throw this back to you because you're kind of controlling the ship right now, so please.
I think that there's, of the people that played on that show, like Adrian Belew, I think, is the only one that comes to mind as like really still active and doing stuff. But he's an interesting guitarist to think about in the context of experimentalism and also consummate player's player. Like he's got the chops to be in King Crimson and the noise effects that he brought into King Crimson. Which that's a guitarist's band. Of all the prog bands to be in the League of Crafty Guitarists like that. It's an interesting little space that I would love to come back to, how that era, Laurie Anderson being on a vanguard of sorts, brought us where we are. And I also feel like, Brett, you had your hand up, and I think we've gone a little bit far from where you were at it, but can you still bring us back to what you were thinking about?
It was kind of along the lines of the experimentalism a little bit.
I would like to stick
and tying
with that
back in AI a little bit. I guess what I kind of like about it and some of the samples and such that I'm seeing come out, regardless of how these things are coming online, one of the things that it's doing for me is kind of giving me that sense of that throbbing gristle sort of sense, where it's like, okay, here's musicians who actually know how to play. Now here's instruments you don't. Have fun.
Yeah.
And in that same regard, that for me is kind of that's what kind of drives me forward. That's why it's like I pick the Kurzweil, and it can do literally anything, which causes that a little bit of freeze up sometimes, because you can literally do anything. So, but that's what it's those kinds of things that interest me. So I think it's kind of cool in that regard.
I think one of the thing that there's like this little corner that we don't talk about overtly so much, and that's where Devo meets Eno meets Adrian Belew. And those three things have sort of come up, and there's a difference between the like Devo demos and then the Devo Eno produced stuff that is really interesting. And I'd have to get my ears back around it, but I think specifically there's a demo of Mongoloid and an album version of it that has this stark difference in how the synthesizers are approached and how brash the mistakes are in one and not the other, that I want to come back to sometime.
Okay. I want to touch on this, and I'm going to plug. I have a good friend who has a channel, and this is Alex from Vulture Culture. That's Alex's channel, and Alex does a whole bunch of really cool stuff with synthesizers. And on Wednesday nights, he does deep dives, and they're quite deep into things that different synths can do. And he was versing a Chroma Polaris against a Yamaha CS70 the other on Wednesday night, CS70M, and it was great. Comparing the oscillators, look, whatever, that's great, but it was just a fascinating reminder to listen to the mayhem you can get out of a fucking Yamaha CS series. And my point here is it comes back to those guitarists, etc., who are profoundly good at what they do. Unfortunately, something that happens with most guitarists, the better they get, the less they experiment, like weird fucking noise shit. But it's that weird fucking noise shit that pushes you forward. And when you listen to old Devo, what they're doing on a Moog, people are still trying to figure out how the fuck did they do that? How did they do that? How did they get that sound out of that Moog? How did they do it? Like it would have had to been two people and then switching shit. Like that's what they had to do. And it's interesting listening to the crazy mayhem that, Alex was pulling out of this, Yamaha, beautiful fucking Yamaha. And I was really, and I listened to this stuff, and I listened to all the shit I can pull out of my gear, and I never use it in music. Instead, I always seem to gravitate towards that are digestible. I guess I have increasingly, I like those sounds that are digestible, and at the core of it, at the core of all of this today, that's my problem. And a problem with AI. It's not a problem with the market. It's not a problem with X, Y, fucking Z. It's a problem with Carl. And my problem is that I'm pushing so hard to try and have the bravery, my comfort zone, but it's also fear. And I have to, and you can go, fear of what? But that's the question you can't ask somebody, It is a greater fear. It is a greater paranoia. It is this, and it's not society. There's something inside my head that is stopping me from hurling myself into the abyss. And I listen to a lot of music, and I don't hear many people hurling themselves into the abyss anymore. I don't hear Too Dark Park anymore. And even if Too Dark Park came out again, I don't know if we as an audience could handle it. But that's another rant. My point of the rant is about me. My point of this rant is that, and if you feel the same way, I'm encouraging you to try and break out of that, to try and dig yourself out of this grave that I am in, and I know other people are in too. I'm just trying to think of people who aren't in that grave, and I'm sorry I can't. Who are really going, they're not saying fuck you society, fuck you this, fuck you that. They're saying fuck you to themselves. And they're saying fuck you to what is the things inside them that is holding them back. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? And that's that is the real absolute personal rebellion that I am currently trying to fight. And yes, comfort zone kind of. And I wonder, is it because I'm older? And when I look at myself and I look at my lyrics and everything else, is that I am angrier than I've ever been. I am more articulate in what and maybe that's the fucking problem, is I'm not sloppy and messy, and I don't have a machete anymore, or a chainsaw, a big chainsaw like the one in the end of Mandy. I don't have that chainsaw. Now I have this very fine scalpel and a very fine chisel. I've got to find that fucking chainsaw again. That's my rant. Bom, 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 bom.
Thank you, Carl. Now
you.
let's talk about taxes.
I was going to say, maybe you need a scalpel cannon.
Yeah. But how? And how do you maybe I should talk to my therapist about this stuff, but you guys have kind of become my therapist, so how do you like look at Delia Derbyshire, like look at Doctor Who on the subject of CS80s, like the decisions that went into creating the track the way that track came out to make it a classic, that even after fucking 50 years later they went back, or 40 years later they went back to the original version. They went, there's things about this original version that are actually better, we're going to be using that instead. And that's no shine on anything or shade on anything. I don't know, there's just this, maybe I'm even more angry and more than I was, but I find no sphere that will hold the volume of wrath that I'm feeling. And I find no musical idea and concept that can hold it. Because I'm so incredibly fucking angry.
How does that relate specifically to what Delia did with tapes and oscillators, to that theme? Because I think there was something in there.
Yeah, I don't know if Delia was a good example, because Delia knew exactly what she was doing.
Yeah.
And she Delia was was absolutely a bad. I don't know. Maybe it goes back to Laurie Anderson on the paved sidewalk of Brooklyn, with bricks tied to her feet, playing violin, and calling it art. You know, you know, they say throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks. Does that also include, you know, the violins and the very expensive Stradivarius violin and shit? You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
I can't. But the really fascinating thing about, and that's what's great about saying, well, you know what, I'm going to try a completely different form of synthesis, or I'm going to try a totally different road to try and find what kafuckery is down that path, you know?
Well, here's the thing. Like, I'm not connecting with the anger there. I thought maybe I was, but if anybody on this panel hasn't watched Daphne Oram or Delia Derbyshire and wanted to go out and buy test equipment at some point, I would be very surprised. I think that is probably a rite of passage. And I think that in the true spirit of using gear in a punk way, not for its purpose, and creating something out of it, we're getting back to some very fundamentals of our genres here, of electronic music. And there's something so distilled in that fucking second generation, maybe, Doctor Who theme, not the very first one, but the edit, which is longer, it has more spangles and
it's got the second
rushing noises. Yeah, like, I don't know if that's nostalgia, I don't know if that's the aesthetic, but that was a frightening piece of music. That was a making machines bend to our will in a lab era where engineers, you know, had pocket protectors and white shirts. And I think that might have been a requirement at the Beeb. I don't know. Sure looked it. But there's something in that very soft-spoken, unassuming person of Delia, and that, like, even her incidental music and stuff was deeply unapproachable. It didn't sound like other things. It didn't sound like she imagined it. It sounded like she summoned it from parts and assembled it in a weird way. The Ziu theme with the aliens is one of the most distilled, creative, odd pieces of noise, you know, that sticks in my memory as a memorable piece of music, of incidental score. And there's something in that weirdness, in that unique strangeness, that I don't know how this ties into, will a computer ever generate that stuff? And I don't know if we've, like, gone back more than 50 years, 60 years to a time when there was a change, a shift that brought us to where we are today. But there is something definitely about that moment in history that we like owe a lot to. And it's like really fascinating. And I find to be some of the most inspirational, fundamental stuff that we've talked about so far. Oof.
Okay, if I may, so flipping it now to jazz, but yes, there's a song, I'm going to put it in the chat, and when you get a moment, listen to this song. It's a song called Nature Boy by Nat King Cole. I think it was Nat King Cole who wrote it. You may know this song. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because it is dark. It's a beautiful song. Hold on, make sure I got that link right. This is the George Benson version of it. And the story goes that Nat King Cole was and this is tied into what we were talking about. Nat King Cole knew a guy who was homeless, and he lived under the Hollywood sign, and he had a song. And Nat King Cole wrote this song with this guy. And there's a conspiracy theory that that guy was actually the devil, or it was a being. I don't know how true that is. It's probably a pack of shit, because his grandkids are probably living and everything's fine. But listen to this song. and listen to what this song is doing musically. Listen to what this song is doing. And listen to the original Nat King Cole version. This is the George Benson version that I put in there that I was brought up with. And because I was brought up with, I've never really listened to it, but because of X, Y, and Z recently, this song is haunting. This song is so unspeakably beautiful, and there is a darkness in this song that reflects the darkness that is in Hotel California. There is a demon living in this song. There is a spirit that lives in this song, and you can interpret or not interpret that however you want. Listen to what the chords are doing. Listen to what the melody is doing. They make no fucking sense. But because it is so heart-stoppingly beautiful, it makes sense. And I think that the level of freedom and ingenuity that is in this song and in a lot of the other stuff, like fucking the early Art of Noise and Devo, whatever that magic is, I fucking want it. Because it's inside me, it's inside you, the magic's inside everyone. But finding that magic is, that's the hard point, is that burrowing through all of this stuff, this noise, this expectation to find that, and I heard another beauty this week where somebody was saying, oh yeah, man, the world is your oyster. And the kid looks back at him and said, no, I am the oyster. Fuck the world. I'm trying to go into myself to find the pearl. And I just went, oh, that's great. That's fucking amazing. The world isn't the oyster, you are. And the trick is, who gets the pearl? Are you going to give the pearl to somebody else, or do you get that pearl? Takes a lot of work to get that pearl out. Oh man, it's a lot of heartache to get that pearl out.
And you need a source of supreme irritation to start forming the pearl in the first place.
That is so fantastic, Razi. Yes. Yeah. So I think yeah, Kitty, keep it. Keep that damn pearl to yourself. My closing thought is listen to Nature Boy and then listen to Laurie Anderson and listen to Devo and whatever is going on and Art of Noise and whatever is going on here. How do you find it? And for everybody, the path is going to be different. How do you find the pearl that is in you? And that's about our time. We're going to make the same time next week. Hook it up with the secretary out the front. That'll be $300. Thanks so much.
Can you check it with my insurance and see if it's covered or not? Just because money.
Yeah. Please listen to that song. And also, can we get some links here to also Laurie Anderson's Home of the Brave as well? Because thank you so much. Oh yeah, that's the Nat King Cole version. It's exit through the gift shop. There's another conversation. So yeah. Isn't it funny? We started with AI and we've ended in the ultimate human experience. Like, yeah. Anybody?
Looking for links now.
All right, yeah, find some links. Crickets. Actually, Laurie Anderson, listen to the lyrics as well. Because the first track on that album, I don't know what it's called, but the question, she's asking this question, it's a game show, and she's asking the question, what's more macho, a pineapple or a banana?
Tienes más macho.
No, banana is more macho. And it's such Laurie Anderson makes these incredible social commentaries. I don't know if she's trying to be funny, but she's really funny. Fucking great album. Hold on. Yeah, this is once again getting into the communication with the subconscious. Maybe I just need to fucking meditate more or something. I don't know.
I sent you the stuff that started me on that to really.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
And a year's worth of doing it, and I swear, everything's like, woo, and I'm very happy as hell. Let me tell you, I'm getting my creativity to that point. Yeah.
Rezi, will you just put something in Twitch? What is that?
I in my haste to post the link the minute I found it, because I fucking love this song and performance, I just posted the search rather than the link to the YouTube clip. So
okay,
the second clip is Laurie Anderson performing Gravity's Angel from Home of the Brave.
Fantastic.
Did you know that so Peter Gabriel sang on that album with her, Gravity's Angel, and then she sang on one of Peter Gabriel's albums. I don't know which
Curious
one.
Birds.
Absolutely influential piece of work.
They did it together, but different versions.
Different versions.
Each other's.
Excellent Birds.
I love it.
This is the picture.
Oh, Excellent Birds. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
No,
Fantastic.
I mean, while we're on the topic of that stuff, there's a whole world there to keep inside of, where I've spent a lot of time trying to soak up influences and stuff personally. So I'm right there with you.
She also did a track with Jean-Michel Jarre on the album Zuluk. And I think it's called Zulukology. I don't know. I'm going to look that up because it's... Yeah, okay. You know what? It's funny. We've never really hit Laurie Anderson before.
She was my first influence on synthesizers, and plus she was a female doing this. And I was like, here I am, 13, 14 years old. Like, yes, that's what I want to be when I grow up.
I get chills just hearkening back to those days too, man. That's absolutely very, very influential.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay. I've got so this is she actually did a few songs with Jean-Michel Jarre. This is Devo from, I think it was 1984 Zuluk. And what she's doing is amazing. She's speaking this strange language, like language of alien angels or something. I don't know. And it's just great. The whole concept behind Zuluk is language. Just fucking fantastic. Fucking fantastic. Okay, since this has turned into a YouTube party, we might call it.
Yeah. I was on the verge of wanting to post another link, but let me just mention she did a really
link.
She did a really interesting series during the lockdown. That was I think it's the Spending the War Without You one, where she's talked a lot about Lou Reed and her relationship and her history and stuff, and it was actually sort of autobiographical rather than just expressly musical. But
she also did a thing called Heart of a Dog.
Yeah.
That if you ever lose a pet, I'm gonna cry. Watch it. It's heartbreaking. And and this is Laurie Anderson, who's the queen diva of weird fucking arty shit, who's talking about the death of her dog and how deeply it impacted her. And she was actually married to Lou Reed, and she was with him up until his passing as well. Yeah. That's how incredible Laurie Anderson was. She caught Lou Reed's heart, and fucking, she's just brilliant. Yeah. Brilliant icon. This is Art of Rock. Every Saturday, we're here. Angelspit's Twitch, although a lot of people are watching it on YouTube, but that's great. This is Angelspit's Patreon. It's been made possible with, and I thank you again. I will leave you with the concept of listening to the Industrial Incisions playlist. Please go on there and find a band you love and play their music. If you got 100 people, 1,000 people like your songs, and they play you every day, it will pay half your rent. Think about that. Do the maths. This is Razie's YouTube and Patreon. Increasingly, Razie, I can't thank you enough. What you were doing is fantastic. We are now going to fuck on over to MTV TV. Diana, if you'd be kind enough to start that raid. And if you're watching this on Twitch, On Instagram. We're rating on over there now. So Twitch or Facebook or wherever you're watching, we're going to MTV TV. And if you do a live stream, always raid back to MTV TV because they are dope. Diana, let me know when that raid's happening. We're just going to hang back here for a bit and talk. Probably swap some views. And remember to listen to Nature Boy, that link I put in there. Terrifying song.
And if you turned off your notifications back when you weren't looking at Twitch as much as you once thought you would, turn your notifications for MTV TV back on.
Yes.
Like I did.
Do it. 1,000 times do it. Diana, have we rated yet? Even the lyrics to Nature Boy, they're dark. Like, they're really dark. It's about a boy who goes on a voyage. It's kind of where the wild things are, but it's dark. It's so dark. And how are we going on that rating?
You rated. Done.
Right. Everyone else, we're gonna end this thing. Thanks for joining us. We're just gonna hang back here and chat. You rock.